Today, we're going to talk about using your visual thinking skills to conduct an annual review, and I'm going to share with you how my 2015 went. Let's get into it. So this is the third year that I've conducted an annual review, which is a process that entails looking back at the previous year, seeing what went well, what didn't, and then looking forward to the year to come and setting up some intentions, some themes, some processes so that this next year can be even better than the last. When I went through this process last year, I was just at the early stages of this video series here. So you can look back at the two videos that I created, which were the first looking back at that time, looking back at 2014, and sharing some more details about how you can do this annual review process yourself, and then looking forward to 2015 and the plans that I had for that year. So check out those videos for a bit more context on where I was back then. Today, I'm going to share with you how 2015 went. Let's get into that. Let's start by looking at this concept of the three buckets, which is an idea that I learned from Jonathan Fields. And this idea has had a significant impact on the way I approached my annual review last year. Here is what those three buckets are. The first bucket is contribution. That has to do with the way in which you're contributing to the world, the work that you're doing and what you're putting out there. The second bucket is connection, how much you are connecting with others and the depth and quality of those relationships. The third is vitality, how well you are taking care of your own mind and body. Now, when I did my annual review 1 year ago, I looked back at 2014 and saw that I was doing a pretty good job of filling the contribution and vitality buckets, but I wasn't doing a good enough job of filling that connection bucket. Now, one of the reasons that that connection bucket wasn't being filled properly is that at the end of 2013, I moved from Portland, where I had been living for the past few years, back to Pleasant Hill, the town I grew up in, and back into my parents' house so that I could focus on what I was building, primarily here at Verbal to Visual. So my financial burden was lower in that situation, but I was also a bit more isolated, which is part of what contributed to that lack of filling of the connection bucket. In that situation, I also found myself taking on too many projects and not having enough overall focus in the work that I was doing. And for that reason, I decided to theme 2015 as the year of simplicity. And during this past year of 2015, there were three things that I was emphasizing. One, focus, which had to do with decluttering my work life. Two, mindfulness, which had to do with decluttering my mind. And the third piece was minimalism, decluttering my living space. So my goal then for 2015 was to add more simplicity to my life so that I could make space to add more to this connection bucket right here. So let's take a look at how each of these three pieces went in 2015, starting with focus. The focus of my work life this past year has been on Verbal to Visual. At the beginning of 2015, Verbal to Visual consisted of a podcast, a blog, and a video series. And as much as I enjoyed having conversations with others via the podcast and putting together more of a written blog, I decided to focus toward the end of 2015 on videos alone. This format here became my favorite way of sharing ideas related to visual thinking. And because of that focus, I ended up making, by the end of 2015, 73 video episodes like this one. And though I miss those other two forms of sharing ideas, I am very much exploring and going deeper into this specific format. In addition to all of these videos that I've been putting out for free here, in 2015 I also launched the Verbal to Visual Classroom, which consists of a video-based visual note-taking course, a full-fledged course that will walk you through the steps of developing your own visual note-taking process and style, in addition to an online community that meets regularly via webinars and forums, so that there is a community component, folks that are working together to build and apply their visual note-taking skills. This piece has been particularly exciting for me this past year because a few years ago I walked away from a high school teaching career, but I've never lost my interest in education and I've always wanted to design my own classroom. So it has been really fun and engaging and interesting for me to build this online classroom and build all these course materials and start connecting with real people, folks that I can chat with on a weekly basis in the webinars and within the forums within this classroom. And I am excited to continue exploring what this classroom can look like, making it better, tapping into all the resources that are available to us via these technologies that now exist. Let's now look at the second thing I emphasized in 2015, mindfulness. There was pretty much an even split in how I did in this realm throughout 2015. In the first half of the year, I did pretty well with this. In the second half, not so much. At first, I did a pretty good job of regularly clearing my brain, mostly through the morning routines of journaling first thing and also doing a bit of meditation. But I lost track of those two habits when an overall positive change happened in the middle of 2015. In early July of this year, I moved out of my parents' house, hopefully for good, and back up to Portland. And as positive as that change was, unfortunately it led to the dropping of these two habits, mainly because of the simple switch in living situation. As I made the move up to Portland, there were so many other things going on that I didn't do a good job of setting up the time and the space to do these two things every day. And over time, I recognized that that was resulting in too much jumbling of the thoughts in my brain. Thankfully, this shift back to good habits and the regular clearing of the mind, that shift is one that can be made, which is what we'll be talking about next week. First, let's look now at that third piece, minimalism. This piece of minimalism here essentially took a backseat to everything else, largely because of this move. One piece, as I moved from Pleasant Hill back up to Portland, I only took some of my things in the move up here because my overall living space is smaller here than it was in Pleasant Hill. And because of that, my situation here in this apartment in Portland is relatively decluttered. That's largely because I left a bunch of crap back in my room at my parents' house and in the attic and in some other random spaces that I'm pretty sure my mom is ready for me to clean up and clear out. So there is definitely more work to be done in this realm moving forward. So having looked at those three pieces of focus, mindfulness, and minimalism throughout 2015, and this relatively big transition of moving back up to Portland, let's now take a look at how these three buckets turned out overall throughout 2015. Based on the work that I've been doing here at Verbal to Visual, I'm still feeling pretty good about how that contribution bucket is looking. And thanks primarily to that move back up to Portland, the connection bucket is getting a lot more attention as well. The vitality bucket has probably decreased a little bit due to me dropping those mindfulness habits and also having more going on around me to the point where exercise has kind of been on and off throughout this year. Overall though, I'm feeling pretty good that these three buckets are getting much closer to being equal. I would say at this point, this bucket's still getting the most attention, but these are pretty darn close, and the gap to making up the difference is much smaller than it was back in 2014. So that's how 2015 went for me. A pretty good year overall. I'm fairly happy with the things that I made and the progress that I've made in my personal life, moving closer towards what I'm shooting for, and I'm really excited for 2016, the year to come. Stay tuned next week when I will share my plans for 2016, and in the meantime, give this process a try yourself and use your visual thinking skills to do so. Map out what last year looked like, what went well, what didn't, and put some pictures to it. See if you can't describe succinctly with some icons and some diagrams what happened last year so that you can see how last year went, so that you can have this picture in front of you of how 2015 went for you, which will then help you to make some decisions and plans about how you would like to approach this next year, 2016. Thank you for watching. Good luck as you take on this process yourself, and I will see you next week.